I'm Park Howell, and welcome to the Business of Story, where I consult, teach, coach, and speak on the applied science and bewitchery of brand and business storytelling, so that you can clarify your story to amplify your impact and simplify your life.
I thought it was just a stupid picture of a pig in the ocean. But after hearing that story, I had to have it. Now I wasn't just buying a picture. I was buying a story. Story literally made the picture worth more money to me.
That's what businesses are about. People buy brands. People buy stories much more than anything else.
I work with a lot of big enterprise companies, but let's just say I always tell folks, drop the PowerPoint, close your laptops, start with your story.
If you want people to get engaged and you want people to act, you have to tell them an emotionally powerful story. That's with great characters, it's with uncertain outcomes, and it's with high stakes and drama.
All business strategy is a story.
Welcome to the New Year's Eve edition of the Business of Story. I am so glad you're here because I'm sure as 2018 dips in the past, you have many wonderful stories and probably some crazy ones and some that didn't lead to the perfect outcome you were looking for, but stories nonetheless that makes a life so fulfilling. And here we are on the very cusp of 2019. And by the way, probably by the chance you're listening to this, it is 2019. So happy New Year to you. And we have a terrific guest with us today because we're going to talk about how you can actually write your own fictional stories to help you live into those to achieve just about anything you want to achieve. I mean, it's really quite amazing. And that's our goal for 2019. Let's see if we can't live into even more adventure than we did in the past. And I think for 2019, it is particularly poignant for me because I lost and our family lost a great, great man. Our father, Keith Clinton Howell, he passed away on November 27th. And recording this show, my first day back from being up in the Seattle area where we buried him on December 3rd. And here we are actually recording this show on December 6th. And I think the universe and maybe his spirit has presented our guest to me today because she's been through loss in her own life, as I know so many of you, if not all of you, have had a significant person in your life pass away, and the void it leaves. And yet we have to be able to look at the blessing that they brought to this world. And that, in my case, my dad, known as Casey to his colleagues, known as Uncle Skeeter to his nieces and nephews, and even known as Chief to one hard of hearing senior woman that we used to take to church when we were little kids, and she could never quite make out his name is Keith. She always thought it was Chief, and it stuck with us. We thought it was a hysterical, wonderful name for a man that touched so many people, lived a long life, passed away at 92 after about 5 years of battling Alzheimer's. So it was a blessing he went, but boy, do we miss him. And I know he's standing by my side as we jump into 2019 and we assemble those people that really make the greatest impact in our lives, that bring the absolute best, most positive energy into our world that we all get to feed off of and live into and create real momentum for what we want to get out of life. So when it's our time to be pushing up the daisies, we've lived it to its fullest. And in the case of my dad, he left everything on the field. He did everything he wanted to do. And so I miss him. But let's move on to 2019. And how can we overcome some of these tough stories, some of these tough things that simply happen to us to live into and lead into just a more powerful life, a more powerful story? Well, with us today is Andrea Cadelli, and Andrea and I first met at StoryCo. This was the event that was put on by Dan Lemon and had really great storytellers and content marketers back in October 25th in 2018 in LA. And Andrea is a regular listener of Business of Story, and she came out. I didn't know she was coming out. After the session, after 4 hours of really remarkable storytelling training, she came up to me at the reception, introduced herself, and said, "You know, Park, I've come all the way from Arkansas. I've been following your show. You had all of the folks that were going to be here on your show. I was so impressed. I said to myself, these are my peeps. And so I need to invest in myself and invest in the time and get out to StoryCo in LA and meet you folks and see what you're all about. Well, Andrea and I have had a chance to get better acquainted over phone calls since then, and I just marvel at the work she's done, the things that she has overcome, and her new book that I had a chance, and it was perfect timing because I read the majority of it on my way up to Seattle. And she's here to talk about her new book and what it means and what it can mean for you. So without further ado, let me bring Andrea. Please say a heartful welcome in your heart and a happy new year to Andrea Cadelli, who is going to join us and show us how we can write fiction and live into our most powerful stories. Andrea, welcome to the Business of Story.
Thank you so much, Park. It is so awesome to be on one of my favorite podcasts. It's kind of like a dream come true for me. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today.
Well, thank you so much for that. And I'm still kind of trying to get my head around my own life here. So if I'm stuttering and stammering, that's the reason why. But I think our timing is perfect here because I want you to also help me live into an even more powerful story here in 2019. And when I asked you on your guest input form what you would like the show to be called, you said, designing your future begins with healing your past, the power of self-narrative. Can you give us your backstory and how have you come to this realization of the power of self-narrative over some of those troubling times in the past so we can live into a more prosperous future?
You bet. I would love to. So, just as with my book, my journey really started, Park, in the summer of 2016. I had just moved over, was promoted with the company that I was working with. I'd been with the company for about 20 years, and I'd taken a position in change management.
And the company was?
Walmart. And I also worked for Sam's Club. So
were you right there in Bentonville?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So had been with the company for a long time. Now, to make sure that I'm clear with the story, I left once to go to graduate school. So I left to go get my MFA in theater, in directing. And then I came back to the company and I was there another probably 4.5 years and then left to go be a director of fine arts at a charter high school. And that didn't pan out very long. They didn't make their numbers the first year. And I didn't realize it when they hired me, but my position was not a budgeted position. So when they didn't meet their numbers, I was the first position to get cut. So I went back to Walmart after that, and I was there about another 9 years. And in that 9 years, I spent the majority of it in marketing. I did digital marketing, email marketing, and print marketing during that period. And then I had taken a promotion to go over to change management, which I loved because it was really a culmination of all my skills and talents. It was basically bringing marketing, training and development, and communication together to consult with executives. And I absolutely loved it. I thought I had died and gone to heaven. I thought, oh my God, this was the role created for me. And honestly, in my 20 years with the company, I'd never found a position that felt like such a perfect fit for me.
Well, isn't it interesting too? Because I have found the same thing in my career of advertising and branding. And now really in the past 8 to 10 years, the most work I've done is more in around leadership development and pulling teams together internally through the stories that they're living into. But what I learned as a creative writer and in the advertising world and making concepts really stand out through branding has such a big impact in what I do now. And your world has come together as both very similar in the creative advertising arts, but also your theater background of really understanding the emotion of what makes a story work and how you bring those two worlds together in a large corporation like Walmart to help bring people together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I had gone and gotten certified. The company paid to certify me in change management. I came back and was loving my life. I thought, wow, 20 years it took me to find this role. And I'm so glad I'm in this position.
And what year was this?
This was in 2015 when I went over to that role. And in the summer of 2016, I was displaced as part of an organizational restructure. And I was devastated. Not only because I had lost my job, Park, but if you've read my book, you know that a year prior, I had lost my youngest brother to stomach cancer. And he was 34 years old. He had 2 young children, and he was my best friend. We were very, very close because I had also lost my middle brother in a tragic accident years earlier. So my youngest brother and I were very, very, very close, and I'd lost him, and then I lost my job, and it just felt like my world had really turned upside down. For the first time in my life, I was uncontrollably fearful to the point that it would cause me to have anxiety attacks. I was having panic attacks. Park, it was horrible.
Well, and I gather in meeting you, the spirit that you expressed it when we met over at Storyco, and then our subsequent conversation, that you are a relatively optimistic, outgoing, fun-loving type individual.
Yes.
And this sounds like it just totally collapsed that in on you.
It did. It absolutely, I mean, literally, I didn't know what had happened. It's like, this isn't me. I'm not a fearful I mean, I was so nervous. And I think what it was, Park, is that so many unexpected things had happened in such a short time frame that I was ready for the next ball to fall, right? It's kind of like, I'm going to be next. I've lost so many people in my family, all the men in my family, and somehow it triggered some kind of fight or flight. And so it was a really scary time in my life. And, in the midst of all this, I'm trying to figure out, what am I going to do next with my life? So I reached out to a good mentor who had been a mentor of mine for many, many years. And he had actually been also displaced from Walmart several years prior to me being displaced. And he said, you know what, Andrea, you are so talented. You're going to be able to do anything you want. But the key is you've got to decide what you really want to do next. And I thought, what great advice, And he said, don't rush out and just take another job. And that was the best advice I ever got. He said, I want you to sit down and I want you to write out all your values, the things you believe in, the things you value. And then I want you to make a list of the things you enjoy doing. So I did. And then he said, I want you to look at that list and see, based on your values, beliefs, and the things that you feel like you enjoy doing, that you're skilled at, that you're talented at, what does that look like? And so I started thinking about it, and I said, you know what? I'm going to get feedback from other people on what they see in me, where they see my talents might lie. And so I reached out to about 35 people that I knew either from the time I was a little kid. Some of them I'd only known a year through business, but I tried to get a really wide range of people that had known me. And I asked them, if you could describe me in 3 words, what would those 3 words be? And Park, it was really frightening. There was one word that every single person used: storyteller. So I go back and I look at my list. I'm like, this is weird. Every single person said, I'm a storyteller. So I go back and look at my list, and I'd written things down like, what do I enjoy doing?
But what were the other 2 words? You had storyteller, but I'm really curious what the other 2 words were.
Well, the other 2 words varied from person to person. So the one in common was storyteller, but people said, you're engaging. You can engage anybody. People said you're optimistic. Your energy. When you walk in a room, it's your energy. You can take over the energy in the room. And so those are some of the ones that popped out for me that really made me think, maybe I have something that I don't know that I have.
Well, let me ask you then. So here you are in like a really dark part of your world, your life at this point, and you felt like you were paralyzed. Can you take us to like that darkest moment? Hollywood calls it the darkest hour of the soul, of when you really realized that, okay, this is like rock bottom emotionally, and I got to pull out of it, to the point that you went after and started asking these questions of what people saw in you.
Yeah. So for me, Park, I think because I've always been such a confident person, what happened, my darkest moment was when I started having the panic and the anxiety attacks. And I realized how afraid I was. And that terrified me because I'd never been afraid in my life. Everything I wanted growing up into my adulthood, I just went after it. And all of a sudden, I was so terrified that I just felt like I could barely make it out of the house. And at that point, I said, this isn't me. There's something wrong. And I've got to do something about this. And my dad, I grew up with a father who was a counselor. And I will tell you, it wasn't until all this happened to me that I realized I can't do this by myself. This isn't something that I'm going to be able to get through on my own because my emotions had gotten so out of control. It was like I was spiraling downhill and I couldn't grab anything to stop me. And so I decided I'm going to have to reach out and go to a counselor and, really get some professional help to help me get through this. And I did. So that was really, I'd have to say, rock bottom for me was that realization that I had lost my confidence and that I was absolutely terrified of what was going to happen next. And I'm like, I can't live like this.
So then how did story play a part in your, I don't want to say resurrection, but getting you out of that funk? How did you use story to help right your ship?
Well, and I'm so glad that you asked me that, because when I was going to the counselor, she kind of helped me see that I had a lot more control over my life than I realized I had. And so one of the things that she did with me was she taught me how to meditate. I had never meditated. So here I am. At the time I was 44 years old, had never meditated. And she taught me how to do that. And every day I would come home and I would meditate. And one of the things I started to do during my meditation is I started creating the person that I wanted to be. And I would just say things out loud. Like I would say while I was meditating, I'm a confident person. I chase my dreams. I make friends easily. I just started kind of creating my own little sort of mantra.
And were you feeling that when you were saying that? Or at any point did you feel,
No, I was not feeling it at all. But she had told me, Andrea, you have the mental control to actually tell yourself a different story and pull yourself out of this. And I was like, really? I do? Because I don't feel like I do. But I chose to have faith in that and really start to try to turn my story around. So where I was afraid that I was going to die because I'd lost my youngest brother very tragically, lost my middle brother very tragically, and I also lost my father very tragically, I started to tell myself things like, I'm of sound mind and body. I'm healthy. So I started to tell myself things that I didn't at first believe. But because I just continued to say that when I was meditating, I started to believe those things were true. And they are true. They are my truth now. But at the time when I started it, they weren't. And it's kind of like, Park, I equate it to your subconscious is kind of like a sponge. And whatever you tell it, it just soaks it in. But it doesn't have a truth filter. Your subconscious just takes everything in. That's its job.
So you're able to write this fiction, or at least what you believe is the fiction for you, because you're not feeling particularly energetic or courageous at the moment, but you tell yourself enough that the self-conscious then starts believing in that and leading you in that direction, leading you in that energy field.
That's correct, because the subconscious doesn't know what's true. It only knows what it takes in. And so I just decided I was going to keep feeding myself the things that I wanted to become that I was not at that moment. And I wanted to gain my confidence back. I wanted to be happy again. All the things that I wasn't feeling, I just started telling myself that I was those things. And I think it's, what I learned from that experience is just how much control we have over our self-narrative. We can either, and that's a good thing, but it's also a cautionary tale, because our story that we tell ourselves can either trap us or it can set us free. And so, we really have to be intentional and careful with the things we choose to say to ourselves. Because again, the subconscious is a sponge. It's just soaking it all in. It's not deciphering what's true and what's not true.
Mm-hmm. And this realization, Andrea, did this come from everything from, your father, the counseling years, what you maybe gleaned from that, to your theater studies and emotion, to being a storyteller, creative person, to working at Walmart then in trying to build camaraderie and teamwork internally? So you had been using and directing stories pretty much your whole life, only to find that now you had this very dark moment and you were just telling yourself, really fictional bad stories. I mean, that you didn't have control and you were fearful of that, that you had to then turn that back on its head again, back to the optimistic stories.
Yes,
But
that's
was
correct.
it, I mean, do you think you were able to do that because of your background, your training in theater and creative and so forth? Or can anybody do this?
I think anyone can do it. I really do. I truly believe that, Park. If I can do it, I believe anyone can do it, because it's really about starting to intentionally create in your mindset of who you want to become, right? So I'll give you an example of that. When I got displaced and I was figuring out what the next step in my career was going to be, I knew that I wanted to write a book. Okay. But I had no clue. I had never written a book before. I had no clue of how to write or publish a book. But I told myself that I was an author and that I was going to publish this book. And I basically just kept putting, one foot in front of the other. I'd figure out how to do one thing, and then I got my blog going, and I'm like, okay, well, this is good because now I can kind of grow my tribe, So each little step that I took kind of led me to the next thing that needed to be done. And ultimately, Park, by telling myself that I was an author, that I was going to get this book published and continuing to take action in that direction, I was able to do those things. And I didn't know how to do any of that. So a lot of people will say, oh, well, I can't do this or I can't do that because I don't know how. And that's, an example of a negative story. We don't have to know how. You just have to know what it is you want. And you have to
make it till you make it.
That's right.
To
a degree.
We're 22 minutes into the show, and we've been teasing your book this whole time. And I realize we haven't even announced what the book title is. Life After This, 6 Heartfire Stories to Pick You Up When Life Knocks You Down. So when did you start working on this book project?
I started working on the book in September of 2016, and I finished it in November of 2016.
Wow, that's, I mean, 2 months?
I wrote it in 2 months, yeah.
Because it's beautifully written. I've got to tell you, I thought with a book coming out that quickly, it might feel like it's hurried through and whatever, but it's not. The stories you tell in it are absolutely amazing. I love how you bring in some nursery rhymes to kind of connect people. And then you're also a slam poet, or have been in the past.
Yes.
And so you bring your own poetry. Tell us a little bit about tell us about the 6 Heartfire Stories, and then why did you bring in these other narrative mediums, if you will, to help round out the overall content?
You bet. Well, the 6 Heartfire Stories, and I want to just take a second just to explain what a Heartfire story is. It's really, a story that connects to the heart and ignites the emotions. And I typically think of these as personal stories, since personal stories are typically the ones that really make us relatable and help us build trust with people. So the Heartfire stories in my books were the times in my life where I had to really overcome a difficult either loss or something difficult in my life, some adversity that I had to overcome. I wanted to share those stories because I know that everyone, right? That's a part of our collective humanity, is that we all struggle with difficult circumstances, and sometimes we get stuck. I got stuck, and I wanted to share those moments in my life and kind of how I got through those, and really how they grew me on the other side to be a better person. I'm thankful and blessed for everything that I've been through in my life, because I know I wouldn't be the person I am today without those experiences. So those are the stories I share in the book. They're really my journey of triumph over loss and adversity. And I think for anyone that reads the book, Park, what they'll really experience is a spiritual and healing journey that's told through stories and poetry. And you asked why I included the other narrative forms. Well, first of all, I'm a poet and I love poetry. And I loved competing in slam poetry competitions because I love to hear the words spoken. And I think that's one reason I'm so drawn to theater. I love the spoken word. And so when I sat down and looked at some of the poems I'd used to compete with, I saw connections with the stories I was telling in the book. And I thought, wow, wouldn't it be cool if I included these poems? Because, maybe people read the poem and they better understand the the story or what the character in the story went through, because there are connections in the poems with the stories, just like the nursery rhymes also have a connection to the theme in each one of the stories. So that's why I included those as a storyteller. I love metaphors and I love the spoken word.
Well, it's a way to tell your story and get the moral across in a couple or three different ways, through the fairy tale, setting it up, through the actual incident that what went down, and then how you brought artistry to it through the spoken word with your slam poetry. And within the book too, at least my Kindle version, I can click through and see these actual performances on your website. So it's even that more engaging.
Well, I did that too. I'd never used Fiverr, but I decided I wanted to record these professionally and have them sound added to it, like a sound design added to each one. And so I worked with a guy in Africa, actually, sent him the recordings of just me performing the poems. And then he did all the sound design that you hear in those.
Oh, that's fantastic. I can't wait to, we'll include the links in the notes, but I can't wait to hear from our listeners of what they think of your slam poetry, not only reading it, but then be able to hear it in the spoken word.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're not only an author, but you've got a company going now. How do you take what you have learned in, again, directing theater, your creative pursuits, and working at Walmart with, your internal teams, and all that you've been through in this very rough period of your life? How do you work and use those experiences and knowledge to help your clients, and what are they looking for in you?
Yeah. Well, I think what I really try to bring to the table in working with my clients is just helping them work with their heart as much as they work with their head, because we're intelligent human beings. That's what our name Homo sapiens actually means, wise man. And, sometimes we get kind of caught up in our ego self and we feel like, we have to do everything the right way or our way, or it's not the right way. And sometimes we don't always lead and communicate with our hearts. And so I think what I really do is help people slow down for a minute and really think about, what is the message that you truly want to communicate? And how is that message going to create an emotional connection with your audience? Because until you create that connection with them, they're not going to be as open and receptive to your message, and they're not going to be as easily influenced by what you have to say. And so I really get people to kind of get out of their head, and I put them in their heart, and I help them speak from that point of view.
Yeah, I just did a meme, if you will, for Business of Story that said that very thing. Story gets you out of your head and into their hearts by connecting with them.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I found interesting in your book, and one of your approaches to life in how to help people overcome, that I think people can really use in 2019 if they're out looking for, what is that story I want to live into? Or I know what it is. How do I make that happen? But you have this interesting acronym of growth that has come to you through all of this. Can you take us through that and help our listeners understand how they can use it in living into their most powerful stories?
You bet. Absolutely. So I talk about this in the acronym in my book, and it actually, it's the word growth, and each letter in the word stands for a step in the process. And so, and I'm actually turning to this now in my book, which I've got right here with me. So the G stands for gratitude. It's really about looking at where we are today and being grateful for the things we already have, right? So I know sometimes when we want something in life, we're thinking in the future, like, I want to do this, I want to be this, I want to achieve this. And sometimes when we look and we're that forward thinking, we forget to be grateful and thankful for the things we've already attained, for the goals we've already achieved, and for the blessings we've already received. And so the G is really about just setting a daily habit of expressing gratitude. And I talk in the book very specifically how to do that. So that is what G is for. I personally like to write things down, because I think in the process of writing, I actually feel that gratitude more than if I just think it in my head. So I try to write down 2 or 3 things every day that I'm truly grateful for.
And in doing so, then that creates this positive foundation to your stories and so forth, instead of looking at the negative or, gee, I wish I could have this, or FOMO, fear of missing out, or envy if someone else has got something better than me, which brings that negative energy into your story.
Yeah.
This idea of being writing down and having gratitude, this art of gratitude, just helps create that foundation for positive storytelling moving forward.
Absolutely. And that's one reason, when I had lost so many things in my life, I really had to be intentional about writing down the things I was grateful for, because my feeling inside was of all the loss I was experiencing. But I knew that wasn't the full picture. There were also many, many blessings I had received. So that is what the G stands for. The R in growth is for rise and rest with prayer and meditation. So I told you when I went to the counselor, I was 44 years old, and it was the first time in my life I had ever meditated. It changed my life. That process of meditation, and it doesn't take but 5 or 10 minutes a day. In fact, I did a little meditation before we started our interview today, just because it helps ground and center me. It calms me. It helps quiet my mind down so that I can really focus better. So I'm a big kind of advocate for just prayer and meditation. I like to start my day out that way, and I like to end my day that way. So I talk about that in the book and give some simple ways to bring that into your daily habit if you haven't already.
Yeah, that's great. We had a show a couple months ago with Dr. Ron Bonestetter, and it's show number 170. And he was all about studying the brain and what's happening in there when we are telling stories and reacting to stories, the stories we tell ourselves subconsciously and the stories we think we're telling ourselves consciously. And he talks a lot in that show too about meditation and what they have found about how powerful it is to help shape and mold our minds so that it does enable us to live into a more powerful, energetic story instead of to the negative, dark stories that we can often tell ourselves as well.
It's absolutely true, Park. And I mean, I've seen it happen in my own life. So I know that it's definitely true. And I just want to share that with people. My mother, she's never meditated. She's almost 70. And when she saw how it helped me, she said, "Well, honey, am I too old to meditate?" I laughed and said, "No, Mom, no one's ever too old to meditate." And so she started getting into it too. But it's just great. It really does help center and ground you. To me, it helps me focus, and it just kind of quiets all the noise in your head. So there's a lot of benefits of it.
So we've got gratitude, rise and rest, especially through meditation. What's O stand for?
So O is for own your future. And this is actually one of my favorite ones, because this is when you get to write your future self. I call it a B statement. So it's who do you want to be in the future? But it's intentionally sitting down and really getting clear on what is it I want? Who do I want to be? And really describing that in as much detail as you possibly can in the present tense. So you're going to describe it as though you already are it. And I talk about how to do that in the book. And I also have my own B statement that I wrote for myself. And so that's really, I think, why I am where I am today is I read this B statement. I used to read it every night before bed, but now I still read it 3 or 4 times each week. I still read it and go back to it, and I say, am I on track?
Can we hear some of it?
Yeah, I'll share.
Is that cool?
Yeah, I'll share. So mine is really long, and I talk about in the book that you make it as long as it needs to be. So I'll read a portion of it. Let me get my little book out here. So this is.
I want you, if you would you take us to a portion that when you wrote it, you thought was a real reach, a real stretch that maybe you wouldn't be able to attain, that maybe now you're seeing that, come to life in your life?
Yes. I'm going to read this section because I wrote this B statement in my darkest moment. So
Great.
I wrote this when I just felt like my whole world was falling apart. I am outgoing, fun, and full of positive energy and happiness. I inspire those around me to be their best and to see the world from a new perspective. I am intelligent, thoughtful, intuitive, open-minded, and accepting of others. I am a student of the universe, and I continually learn and expand my awareness and growth. I value my family, friends, and life experiences as they enrich my life and fill my heart with joy and happiness. I am a creative person who loves writing and the visual and performance arts. I am talented in these areas, and they bring me success, fulfillment, and peace. I hold tight to my dreams and nurture them through knowledge and action. I chase them passionately with faith that they will grow me and enrich my life. I am of healthy mind, body, and spirit, and focus my attention on the balance of these through prayer, meditation, gratitude, exercise, and diet. So that's a portion of my B statement. And I wasn't a lot of those things when I wrote it.
And how long ago did you write that?
So I wrote that actually when my brother passed. My youngest brother, he died in February of 2015. I wrote this B statement about 4 months after his death.
And you read it to yourself every day?
Well, I did. For a couple of years, I read it every day. I'd read it right before I went to bed at night because I wanted to basically program my subconscious that this is who I am, even though I don't feel this way right now. Mm-hmm. And so I would read it every night. Now, because I do feel more like my B statement, I really feel like I'm growing into it. I don't read it as often, but I still try to read it 3 or 4 times throughout the week.
And how has it manifest itself in your life?
Well, here's what I see. I wanted to write a book, didn't know how to do it. I did it, figured out how to publish it. I wanted to start blogging, didn't know how to do that. Set up my own website on WordPress, started doing that. I wanted to start my own business, didn't know how to do that. I had never been an entrepreneur. I had always worked for a corporation. But remember, I'm a student of the universe. So all the knowledge I needed, I knew was out there. And so I just started tapping into various resources to figure out how to make this happen. I've been in business now for a full year. And I've been a paid speaker. I've had storytelling workshops that were paid. I've had clients this year. So it's been a great first year for my business. And I didn't know how to do any of that part, but I really believed that I was everything I said in this B statement. So then I just had to step out and start taking small steps.
And you tackled all that fear that was just paralyzing and strangling you.
Yes.
And you said, the only way you're going to get over that, I guess, is really to embrace it. Say, I'm going to take you on. You are literally in Joseph Campbell's Dark Night of the Soul in the dragon's den, dueling with that fear serpent, that serpent of fear. And the only way you're going to overcome it is to roll your sleeves up and get after it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will admit, Park, there are times when I still get really, I want to say fearful. I want to use the word fearful because it does feel like fear, like it feels like it's suffocating me. But now I know that I can overcome it. So I just say, you know what, Cadelli, you're going to go do this. You said you were going to do it. You're going to do it. And I make myself do it. And I feel so much better after I do whatever it is that I'm afraid of, whether it's going out and speaking, whatever it is, I make myself do it. And then I say, see, that fear is it's not going to kill you.
Yeah, and how many times have you actually fallen on your face by doing it? I would say probably zero.
Zero.
You actually lose by doing nothing, by remaining in status quo, because you haven't even given yourself a chance to succeed. So the serpent of fear wins that bout every single time. Right. You just got to take it by its neck and wring the hell out of it. Exactly. So you're owning your future through the B statement. And within the book, it talks about how to put together your own B statement. And again, folks, highly recommend this book. I'm reading it on Kindle. It's marvelous. And again, it's called Life After This, 6 Heartfire Stories to Pick You Up When Life Knocks You Down. All right, so let's move on to the W in growth.
So the W is win with goals, skills, and mentors. And I really enjoyed writing this part of the process because it's a part of the process that I believe so adamantly in, but it's goal setting and how to really set goals that are achievable using the SMART system. So I walk through very specifically how to do that. And then it's about really figuring out what skills do you need. So when I wanted to become an author, I thought, well, I've never written a book before. I should probably, improve on my writing skills some. And so I went out, I took some online classes, I signed up for some local seminars. So I very specifically walk you through how to kind of list what skills you need to develop. And then I kind of even guide you on where to go to find those skills. So, I didn't necessarily have the skills to do everything I'm doing right now, but I knew that if I was very clear on what skills I needed, there's pretty much nothing out there that I can't learn or find. We have all the online training, Udemy, there's Linda. I mean, there's so many places now where you can go out and really, you can really get any skill set you need pretty much online, unless you're wanting to be a doctor, then, you're going to have to go, you're going to have to go back to med school. But
And I like that you include in this part win with goals, skills, and mentors. And you've been very good about reaching out to people. I know some of the folks that were at StoryCo, you've already reached out to. You reached out to me not only just to talk about your book, but ask me questions about how I built Business of Story. So I think it's so wise of you. I mean, every time I have a guest on my show like you or anybody else, they are a mentor to me first and foremost, because I get to hear the show before anybody else. And I have learned so much from you all. And you had asked me, what was maybe something that you learned in the last year or two that was really powerful. And I will tell you, folks, in 2018, the book that I really got a lot from is the book called The One Thing. And I learned about it from my mentor, Dr. Randy Olson, who created of the And But and Therefore. And I follow him a lot. And he talked about The One Thing. And I read that book and I shared that with you about the thing when you're building a business and you're trying to do lots of different things to figure out what works and what doesn't work. We tend to have ADD in that process. And the idea is to boil that down and find that one thing that you're really good at and that really works, that helps build your entire business. So it does simplify your life while amplifying your impact. And folks, I highly recommend that. If you haven't read it for 2019, The One Thing, it is I've got it here, The Surprisingly Simple Truth Behind Extraordinary Results by Gary Keller. So Andrea, I want to ask you, what do you think your one thing is for 2019?
I'm glad you asked me that part, because I thought about it a lot after you and I talked about it, but it's really going to be geared around my speaking. I'm going to do less client work next year because I really want to focus on honing my own message and getting out there and really sharing the craft of storytelling with companies and organizations. I think it's a skill set that they need. And I know that I can help them get there. So I really want to focus my one big thing for next year is my speaking engagements.
Perfect. So all you listening out there, think about your one thing. What's the thing that is going to push you over the top? I can tell you mine. It is my 6-week deliberate practice. My 8-week deliberate practice program that I already had a lot of success with clients in 2018. And it is a half-day workshop that then is a follow-on of 7 weeks after that, where you are applying these skills in your day-to-day work. And then at the end of it, we do one final training. And the idea of over the course of these 8 weeks is not only do people understand the applied science of storytelling, but understand too how to apply the bewitchery so they can connect with people and, as I say, help them nudge the world in any direction they choose. In addition to speaking in some brand work, my real main focus for 2019 is the 8-week deliberate practice program. And I'm already having success by just having that my singular focus. So now, Andrea, you talked about gratitude, rise and rest through prayer and meditation, own your future by creating your B statement or your fictional story that you are going to live into. And then that's just not enough. So you've got to set goals and develop your skills and surround yourself with mentors. Mm-hmm. What's the T now in growth?
T is for tell guilt and shame to take a hike. And the reason this one's in the book is when we have something that's weighing our spirit down, it's really hard for us to be the best that we can be because that weight, it takes some of our life energy away from us. And so it's really about, just making peace with the past. Whatever you did, 10 years ago, 2 years ago, it's in the past. And all you can do, all you have control over is to make sure that tomorrow is better, right? And so really forgiving ourselves and just letting go of those feelings of guilt and shame, because they really take away our power.
And it's interesting it comes at this point in the growth acronym. I like it because, you think of gratitude. So you're pushing that negativity aside. You're meditating, getting straight with your own story. You're telling yourself positive B stories. You're now setting goals, and you're finding mentors to help prop that up. And then isn't it always inevitable that little negative, imp of the perverse voice comes in and starts shaming you, saying, no, you're actually making too much progress on these positive fronts. I need to knock you down a few steps so you don't get too full of yourself or be too successful. It is just so weird that those voices creep into our lives, and yet we all deal with them.
Yeah. And they tend to creep in when we're making really good progress. That's what I find. It's almost like they know when you get to a certain threshold, they got to push you back down.
It's the total hero's journey. When you think about it, it's going into that dark night of the soul. And even the way growth is set up and the setup or exposition of a story, the problem, the conflict that you are going to overcome, and then the resolution to it. And boy, it never fails. You got to go in and deal with those demons in the cave of the guilt and shame to take a hike. How have you done that in your own life?
Well, I talk about a lot of that in the book as I tell the stories. But for me, I just got to a point in my life where I wasn't willing to carry the weight of it anymore. I realized that it was taking away my focus. It was taking away my energy. And I literally wrote a letter to myself, and I wrote out all the things that were causing me to feel guilty, that I felt shameful for. And I said, you know what? This is it. I'm going to write a letter to myself. And when I let go of it, I'm letting go of it. And I really did let go of it. But it's just one of those things in our life that, we carry stuff around with us, and we don't realize how much of a burden it is until we do. And when we do realize it's a burden, that's when we start thinking, I got to let go of this because it's holding me back. It's taking my power. And it's dimming my light. And that's why we're here, Park. We're really here to shine our light for others. And we can't have anything that dims our light.
And what better time, what better threshold than right now? The listening of this program, if you're listening to it immediately, you're kicking off 2019 to close the door on 2018 and maybe some of those negative thoughts and all those negative thoughts, and live into a more powerful story in 2019 by doing exactly what you did. Write yourself a letter or do something that identifies that guilt and that shame that is trying to hold you back. It's just the universe really punching you in the nose to see how badly do you really want this.
Right.
And it maybe isn't even being mean in that process. It's just like, I'm going to throw a little doubt in there just to see if you will marshal on and get through it. And then it takes you to H in growth. What is the final letter?
So H is for harmony through helping others. And this is really where I feel like when we get to this point in the process, we're really living, I think, at our best life possible when we're able to focus on helping others. And whatever that means for you, for some people, it's giving of their time. Other people, it's giving of their money. Other people, it's giving their wisdom, sharing their skills, whatever that is for you. There is so much that you receive back when you focus energy on helping others. And so really I had to round out the process with that, because that's when you really feel like you've made it, is when you just get to focus on how you're giving back, how you're helping others.
Yeah, it's bringing and inviting people into your story to help them make it their own, or even more powerfully, helping make their stories that much more potent in their life.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this has been absolutely awesome, Andrea. Where can people learn more about you, and where can they get your book?
Well, they can learn more about me on my website. It's just my name, AndreaCadelli.com. And I know you'll have that in the notes, so I won't bother to spell it out on the show. And my book is available in print and ebook on Amazon. So just if you go to Amazon, it's Life After This.
That's awesome. And my final question for you, has your B story or will it change at all in 2019?
I think the B story will definitely change in 2019. That's what I love about this. It is a very dynamic document. So as I'm growing and evolving, it can grow and evolve with me.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing the holidays with us here on Business of Story and being a part of this and helping our listeners kick off a stronger 2019.
Well, you are so welcome, Park. This was amazing. And thank you again for inviting me. I had a wonderful time.
Awesome. And thank you for listening to this special Happy New Year edition of the Business of Story. And again, if you want to get your New Year's off right, I really, really highly recommend Andrea's book, Life After This, 6 Heartfire Stories to Pick You Up When Life Knocks You Down. I think it's really going to be terrific for you. And if you know someone, a loved one, family member, friend, maybe a colleague who you feel would benefit by listening to this episode, then by all means, feel free to share it with them. Who knows? It could be the most powerful gift you've given all holiday season. I know that might be a little presumptuous on my behalf, but I'm hoping that this works for you and yours. So thank you for listening to this edition. And remember to be back next week when we will have another amazing story artist right here to help you craft and tell compelling stories that sell. And until then, remember that the most potent story you will tell all of 2019 is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. Happy New Year.